Anyatha sharanam nasti, tvameva sharanam mama, tasmat karunya bhave, rakshamam ramneshwara, rakshamam ramneshwara. We've been discussing self-inquiry for the last couple of weeks recently, and the perplexity continued while we were trying to absorb these teachings of Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi amongst us as devotees, and we realized that the questions that came up again resounded like the questions that were asked of Bhagavan in his divine presence in the old hall by very senior or advanced, I don't know which one is the right term, senior or advanced, but devotees who had been spending time with Bhagavan again and again, visiting Bhagavan or living with him, living in the ashram, I mean. And yet their questions bordered around, but Bhagavan, I still don't get it. How to do it, how to stay with the self. I understand it, but I'm not able to practice it. It came up again and again, then, now, and all along. So here is a reminder, again, of why we do not get that clarity. Why are we not able to remove that confusion? Why are we not able to remove that obfuscation about why can't I remain with the self? Self, which is liberation, self, which is awareness, self, which is whatever terminology I use, is self. And we forget as devotees that the prerequisites to be able to abide in the self have to be practiced and abided and obtained, to be practiced and obtained. And we forget that. And we begin to think that just because we are visiting the ashrams or we are doing satsangs, or because I've been associated with the town of Tiruvannamalai for a long period of time, or because I do Giri Pradakshina so many times. And all those things are very good virtues, they're very good practice. All those are very good crutches. And yet it does not give us the clarity of how to be self-realized. Why am I not self-realized? And Bhagavan, no doubt, the advanced teachings that he gave us, he always used to say, you are the self. Just remove the cloudiness. Remove the layer of dust. If you remove that ignorance, that the ignorance that you are not aware, you will be realized. We'll come to that in a moment also. And we forget that. And we also forget that for me to be able to get to the higher stage of residing or practicing, being in the self more often than not, just as when I was new to meditation, it took me a long time. It took us a long time to really begin to be an advanced meditator. Similarly, we have to advance, we have to mature, we have to become pakwa, to come to that stage about beginning to understand how to stay with the self so that I can be self-realized. And Bhagavan gave us very succinct, very clear, and sometimes yet very subtle in his inimitable way as to how can you get there, and we forget. And our ego begins to tell us, I'm an advanced devotee, or I do this, or I do that, and I can chant this or chant that, or I've done this translation, or I sat with such and such devotee, and yes, and all those are good points. Nobody's denying that. Those are all crutches for my own sake, for our sake, to advance to that maturity, to be able to repose, to stay, to abide with the self. Having said that, and accepting that all of us are in that boat, here are 3 references where Bhagavan has directly told us, and we tend to forget about it. We remember it when we visit these lines, but we forget it in our day-to-day dealings. So let me first come to what Bhagavan has told us. So let's go to question number 28 of Who Am I? The questions that Sri Prakasham Pillai asked of Bhagavan in around 1902, around the same time when Gambiram Sheshaya, another devotee of Bhagavan, also had asked him a number of questions, and Bhagavan had, according to Sheshaya's family, Bhagavan had written them out on pieces of paper, and then Gambiram Sheshaya had taken it to his house and had kept on his altar for many years, but was not shared with the ashram until Gambiram Sheshaya would pass on, would move on. It was later on shared with the ashram, and ashram published it. T.M.P. Mahadevan wrote the foreword for that work. Anyway, so let's stay with Sri Prakasham Pillai's Who Am I, which is in Q&A form, which got published in 1923. Question number 28. Reminding ourselves why I'm not self-realized, rather than asking Bhagavan, I still don't get it. And Bhagavan must have been wondering, why can't we get it? He has told us so clearly. This was one of the first teachings, right? So here, question number 28. What is liberation? And before I read Bhagavan's answer, let Bandhu clarify that liberation means the self. Liberation is the awareness. Liberation is consciousness. Liberation is heaven. Liberation is the truth. Liberation is heart. Liberation is that which is. Liberation is that never wanes, never diminishes. You can't chisel it off. You can't make it pointed. Self is the ultimate reality, the only reality that we must accept. We must be clear in our mind that self is the heart, heart is all this that I just said. So now the question is, what is liberation? And Bhagavan says, inquiring into the nature of one's self with a small s, lowercase s, not capital S, inquiring into the nature of one's self that is in bondage, and realizing one's true nature is liberation. Let's absorb it. Rather than asking Bhagavan, let's ask ourselves. Here is a very clear, direct, simple, profound, most teachings of Advait Vedanta. inquiring into the nature of one's limited self, the small s, which is in bondage, and realizing one's true nature is liberation. So Bhagavan has bifurcated it for us. While he told us, just as Shankaracharya has told us, like Upanishads have expounded on it, and we have heard many, many, many lectures of many, many very advanced swamis, be that of Ramakrishna order, be that of any other order, doesn't matter. And we have read it in many other scriptures, that we are the self, Tattvamasi. You are, I am that I am. Aham Brahmasmi. Yes. And yet, to get to that clarity, to get to that understanding, we must understand the nature of one's limited small self, which is who I am in my daily dealings, which is who this wretched soul is, this fool is, who has attachment to money, attachment to reputation, has an agenda, has plans, wants to always look good, blah, 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 wants to be known as a very, very advanced devotee of Bhagavan, or running an ashram, and all those objects. And these are objects. And my body, and always taking care of the body, and running to get vaccinated, and this and that. All those are my limited S attributes. I'm so attached to my money. I'm so attached to my nature, my limited nature. I love it. I can't tolerate if somebody criticizes me. So that limited self is the obstacle for me to not realize the self. And when I become pure, when I begin to look at my limited nature without condemning it, because Bhagavan, we will go to who am I, the other question number 21, where Bhagavan said, no need to analyze the tattvas, right? He also compared it to, do you have to analyze the garbage that you have to throw away? No, we don't. And we are not talking about analyzing. We're talking about recognizing, which is what is very, very important. And unless Bhagavan reveals to us personally, this doesn't become clear. Question 21, since it is very much linked to what we are talking about in question number 28 of who am I, question 21 of who am I is it necessary for one who longs for liberation to inquire into the nature of categories, the tattvas? Just as Bhagavan says, just as one who wants to throw away garbage has no need to analyze it and see what it is. So one who wants to know the self, the uppercase, the capital S, has no need to count the number of categories or inquire into their characteristics. What he has to do is to reject altogether the categories that hide the self. The world should be considered like a dream. Here is a caveat that Bandhu wants to share. And unless Bhagavan reveals to us, and unless the intense calling comes, this doesn't become clear. And that clarity is that before I throw my garbage, I have to know what garbage is. Again, Bhagavan is not saying this. This is a devotee sharing with other devotees, with all earnestness, with 100% truth. When I throw the garbage, I have to know this is garbage, this is not garbage. So I must recognize, not analyze it. I recognize it I understand this is my limited nature, which includes a plethora of things, an infinite permutation combinations of my colorings, of my deviousness, of my polished, packaged personality, always sounding right, always wanting to be in good light. And mind you, this happens in every ashram also. Every ashram is a sansar. So first hint is question number 28, where Bhagavan says, inquire into the nature of one's limited self. I'm adding the word limited. One's self spelt with a small s. That is in bondage, which is in bondage. And realizing one's true ultimate nature is liberation. And then linking it to question number 21, that we don't need to really look at analyze our garbage. But Bandhu is adding, we need to recognize. Once we do that, floodgates will open up. Number one. Second direct hint given to us by Bhagavan, and mortals, we limited devotees, we fools, who think that, oh, we got it. We forget it again and again. Here is a reminder. Verse number 29 of Upadesa Saram. Bandha muktyatī tam paraṁ sukham, vindatīhajī, vastu daivikaḥ. Bandha muktyatī tam paraṁ sukham, vindatīhajī, vastu daivikaḥ. Beyond bondage and liberation lies the limitless happiness for the jeeva, you and I, for the jeeva endowed with divine qualities, who attains it here. Let's absorb it. Beyond bondage and liberation lies the limitless happiness for the jeeva endowed with divine qualities, who attain it here and now. Here, who attain it here. Do we have divine qualities? We don't have divine qualities, but we talk to people, and you hear in satsangs that we are realized. Or we say such and such Bhagavan's devotee was realized. Self-realization is not dime a dozen. Avatar like Raman Maharshi or Shankaracharya are not amongst us every day. Or avatars like Ramakrishna Paramahansa or many other saints. I'm not excluding any saint. Your Ishtadevata may be different than Bandhus. Doesn't matter. Because once we have that clarity, it doesn't matter. So here again, bandha muktyatī tam paraṁ sukham, vindatīhajī, vastu daivikaḥ. Beyond bondage and liberation lies the limitless happiness for the jeeva endowed with divine qualities. But we don't have divine qualities. We are still attached to our money. We are still attached to our reputation. We still connive. We still plot. We still try to prove ourselves right. We still have scores to settle. We are angry with this and angry with that. And nobody's blaming anybody. This happened even during Bhagavan's presence in the ashram, when people who managed the ashram also got into squabbles all the time. This is not Bandhu saying. This is what Devraj Mudaliar and P.V. Narasimhan and many other devotees have said so. Alan Chadwick has mentioned about it. S.S. Cohen has mentioned about it. Many, many incidents have been narrated or written about by devotees during or from that time about the egotistical confrontations that devotees living in the presence of the sage of the sages, Ramana, used to get into. So we don't have divine qualities. That's why we don't have self-realization. We don't stay with it. Though we meet our self every night, once in deep sleep, at least for some time, for normal human beings. And we forget about it. And we sit in front of Raman Maharshi and ask him, but why don't I get it? Oh, but he's already told us. We don't stay with it. And one more last thing, going back to who am I, very clearly, how much more clarity do we need? Bear with me just for a moment. I'm trying to open the pages as slowly as possible so that there's no loud ruffled sound. Question number 5. Will there not be realization of the self even while the world is there, seen as real, taken as real? Let me read that again. Sri Prakasham Pillai is asking Raman Maharshi, will there not be realization of the self, the uppercase self, the ultimate self, the reality, even while the world is there, taken as real? Simple, direct, terse, pithy answer by the sage who was only about 21 years old at that time, roughly 1902. Yeah, roughly about 21 years old. The answer is there will not be. Will there be realization when I see the world as real? No, there will not be. What else can you tell us? For me, the world is real. My house is real. My spouse is real. My kith and kin, my relatives, blah, blah, blah. I mean, listen, labyrinthical permutation combinations of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of permutation combinations of my personality exist. And so does my first person and second person and third person, and permutation combinations of those exist. Unless I drop them, unless I go beyond that, I cannot begin to say, I am in abidance, I am with the self. And just because, okay, that's it. That's it. This is self-realization. We must abide by our conduct in daily life has to be divine. I have to recognize the bundle of colossal dirt that's my personality. I must just recognize it. And then we shall see the floodgates being opened by our Ishtadevta, by our Guru, by the self right behind here, Arunachala. We will merge in Arunachala then, only when we get to that. Otherwise, we're just mortals with a little bit of credit, and our credit is never lost, it doesn't go away if we are sincerely trying to pursue clarity of spiritual life. So that said, this will conclude our self-realization teaching effort. Ekamaksharam Hridi nirantaram bhasate swayam likhyate katham bhasate swayam likhyate katham. हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलम ब्रह्ममात्रम् अयहमहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा स्वम् चिन्वता मच्यता वा पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। अन्यथा शरणं नास्ति त्वमेव शरणं मम। तस्मात् कारुण्यभावे रक्ष मां रमणेश्वर। रक्ष माम् अरुणयाचलेश्वर। अरुणाचल अरुणाचल जय अरुणाचल जय अरुणाचल जय अरुणाचल।